Welcome to the Amplify to Seven Figures podcast, where we look inside the mind of seven-figure entrepreneurs to see how they amplify their business and amplify their life. Let's welcome today's guest.
Have you ever thought of applying science to leverage yourself? It's a powerful concept that can dramatically impact your annual income. When today's guest applied his 12 minutes a day technique to his life after 20 years of low six-figure a year income, he caused his income to lift to 5 million a year in profit. It works because it only focuses on what moves the needle and triples your discipline. As to the credibility, the science behind their methodology was profiled on the cover of Time magazine. Please give a very warm welcome to John Mitchell. How are you doing, John?
I am doing great. Thank you, Paul.
Fantastic. All the way from Texas. I love it. And I love Texas, by the way, especially their brisket. So, John, wanted to jump straight in today. Let's talk about that 12 minutes a day technique. What is this 12 minutes a day technique to creating this massive growth?
Well, this all comes from figuring out a practical way to apply the book Think and Grow Rich. And essentially, as a little backstory, when I was 50, I'd been an entrepreneur for 20 years and just wasn't as successful as I thought I should be. And I'm like, well, how do I change a 20-year history of making low six figures a year and start making seven figures a year? And I know you'll appreciate this, Paul, because when I turned 50, I'm like, hey, I got to make I got to net seven figures a year, not gross, net, if I was ever going to have the exceptional life. And so that caused me to read the book Think and Grow Rich and ultimately create a 12-minute a day technique to apply its central concept. And as you may also remember in the book, it says there's a secret for success, but the author only gives you half of the secret. That's why so many people that have read the book think it's a good book, but never figured out the full secret. And so with that as a preview, that's what the 12-minute a day technique does. And more specifically, what is it? The book says essentially that you ought to apply science to your life to up your success. And the technique involves creating immense intention and clarity about your life, exactly the person you want to be, exactly what you want to accomplish, and precisely how you're going to achieve your clearly defined goals. And so you create that clarity, and the tip of the spear of our methodology is this 12-minute a day technique, but you create that clarity and then you feed that clarity to yourself every day for 12 minutes a day. And after 21 days, all that clarity that you're feeding starts showing up in your thoughts and actions automatically without thinking. And that's the magic, I think, of this.
So is it that combination of habit and also repeated exposure of like you probably had someone's probably had a lot of negative thoughts in the past and negative ideas about life. So if you are reframing that and spending more time going the other way, where you're going, right, these are my intentions, this is where I'm going to go, is it kind of like balancing the scales the other way?
Yes, that's a good way to put it. And I found when I started doing this, quickly my income started doubling to where I ultimately was making $5 million a year after 20 years of low six figures a year. And so one of the things that you may or may not realize is we're all innately wired for survival. And 95% of our daily actions are unconscious. And what that means, Paul, is that when you wake up each morning, you're on autopilot most of the day, innately wired to be fear-based, reactive, and negative. Well, that's exactly the opposite of how you need to be if you want to be productive, creative, and happy, right? Yeah. And it really causes you to operate at 20% of your potential. And if you're a driven entrepreneur with a vision, that's a big problem for you. It may not be a problem for a lot of people, but operating at 20% of your potential is a big problem for someone that's driven. And that's I think the power of this is it materially impacts your income.
So tell me about the most important thing that you've ever learned. You've gone through this massive journey,
Right.
and I just wanted to preface as well, because I didn't know this before the call. That 5 million, it wasn't revenue, that was net. There's a big difference, right? A lot of people say, oh, I'm a millionaire, but then they made about $10 profit.
Paul, I'm glad you mentioned that. You hit my little pet peeve that people say, well, yeah, I'm doing 5 million. I'm like, what are you netting? Netting is what it's all about. What are you putting in your bank account when all the expenses are done? So I'm glad you mentioned that. Great call.
So let's talk about the most important lesson that you've ever had then.
I'll tell you, and I'm absolutely clear about this, is that 95% of your daily actions are unconscious. Because once I got that, and once I really understood that, not just sort of hear it and roll with it, but really think about it and really realize, if 95% of my daily actions are unconscious, I got to influence those unconscious daily actions. I mean, it's pure math. And that's the surprising thing. I see that only about 1 in 5 people influences their mindset each day. And so most people don't really get this, I find, but the ones that do, it's powerful.
Yeah, I'm surprised it's even 1 in 5, to be honest. I mean, if I think about all the people that I know and how many people actually focus on focus on the conscious thoughts at all, rather than the whole, well, I'm just going to go to work, do my thing. I know Tony Robbins says I go wake up in my box house, eat my box cereal, go to the box car, and then come home back to the box and watch the box.
Right. That's great. I'm so into, I saw that if I didn't start making 7 figures a year, I was going to have the average life. And I'm like, I hated the average life.
Yeah.
And I don't, everybody doesn't have to be that way. And I respect the people that's okay. But for me, I hated the average life and I wanted a way to not have the average life.
So was it a fact that you, like, before that process and going through what you go through with the 12 minutes a day, was it you just like, I'm trying everything and I just can't, like, I feel like I'm working harder and harder to try and get this revenue up and get this profit up, and it's not doing anything. So, like, yeah, what made you shift into that anyway?
Well, the frustration of making low six figures a year for 20 years created the frustration with it. And I think when anybody has a decade birthday, when you turn 40, it's a big deal. When you turn 50, it's a big deal.
I just turned 30, so I kind of know what you mean.
Right. Well, I hear you. At 30, it's a big deal. But what happens is that most people sort of do life the normal way, but there's a point where you have enough failure, you go, well, the normal way doesn't work, at least not for the life I want, and that's where I was at. And when I turned 50, I'm like, I got to make it happen in my 50s. There's not another decade hanging out there to, figure it out. I got to figure it out now. And that intense pressure allowed me to, I think, figure out the full secret in the book Think and Grow Rich. And one of the things I find surprising with Think and Grow Rich is you probably know, 100 million people have read the book, and the next best-selling book on success has been read by less than 10 million. And so it's the top book in the world on success by a factor of 10. But I see that only about, I don't know, 1 in 7 people has even heard of it. And I'm like, what does that tell us about the world we live in this world of clutter, when there's a book that's the top book on success by a factor of 10, and only 1 in 7 people knows about it. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing I found fascinating, I think it might have been Jim Rohn or T. Harv Eker. He said in a presentation, "Hey, who's read the book Think and Grow Rich?" And then like, stand up if you did. And then he said the next thing was like, who knows I can't remember how many principles, but who knows the principles of Think and Grow Rich? Like 90% of the room sat down. It says like, so we've read it, and I saw someone call it like, it's almost like we just soak up the stuff and then vomit it back out, like straight at the time. And then if we don't internalize it, it just goes out the window. And I couldn't tell you everything about Think and Grow Rich right now, even though I've read it, I think 3 times.
Right.
So how do you go from just reading something to internalizing something?
Well, get to be 50 years old and be not as successful as you think you should be.
And is that where the 12 minutes a day comes in then?
Well, yes. I mean, I apologize for being flippant about it, but I mean, I feel like that pressure made me figure it out because it's interesting, Paul. I read the book when I was 41, and I just discovered this a couple of years ago in a journal, and I thought it was a great book, but it didn't change my life. But when I read it at 50, and I probably read it then with the knowledge that, hey, it's the top book in the world on success by a factor of 10, that made me go deeper and deeper into it. And the fact that the author says there's a secret, but he doesn't give you the full secret, that's sort of a problem for all of us, because we're just in this world of clutter and not willing generally to go deep on something, especially if it's not just laid out perfectly simple for us.
Yeah, and it's interesting about, like, I mean, I remember first time I read it and I was like, well, just give me the secret.
Yeah.
And then the second time, I was a bit further on in business and I listened to it and I was like, I know what the secret is a lot more, So, and then the third time I read it, I was like, okay, cool. I'm starting to understand the process. So that repeated exposure is important. But I'd also like to talk about the power of perspective. Tell me a little bit about what that's all about.
Wow, that's a great question. I've never been asked that. I think perspective is so critical, because it's hard for us to step back from our own lives, right? And I see that again, back to that decade birthday, there's a sort of a natural inclination to step back from your life and figure out if you're going in the right direction or not. And I see it all the time because I work one-on-one with entrepreneurs to take them to netting 7 figures a year, and oftentimes, let me tell you, really get into how this affects your income, because that's, I'm sure, what you're really interested in. We're defining your succinct business plan, your strategy for success, the 2 or 3 things that move the needle, what your business looks like 3 years from now. What are the steps to get there? What's the linchpin issue? Those things, those 7 or 8 things, take a lot of back and forth and perspective with myself and my client to figure that out, and then get it succinct, so that when you feed it to yourself every day, it has the power to impact your daily actions and thoughts. And so that, in a nutshell, is how it works. But back to your original question, perspective, I see that so often entrepreneurs I work with don't really know what moves the needle in their business, and they think they do, but oftentimes they don't. And I found that the deeper you understand what really moves the needle, the more the needle moves.
And do you think it's a case of you can't see the label inside the jar because
Absolutely.
you're in it all the time?
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm guilty. I mean, I tell you, I'm a blues guitar player, and my sometimes I can't see the forest for the trees, and my guitar teacher has to, make me see the what moves the needle. I think I know, but he can pull it out of me, whereas I can't see it.
And I suppose that relates a lot to the Think and Grow Rich with because like I used well I'm technically still a drummer, guitarist, bass player, and all that kind of stuff. So I started when I was a kid with that. So I know very much about patterns, right? So you start to learn certain ways of doing things on the guitar, and then that just becomes habit, that default. When people go, "Oh, show us a tune," and you go, "Oh, I always do this one, right?" And I bet you've got a go-to song that every time you go, "Check this one out. This is the one I do." Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy, Paul.
And then you're probably taking that and then doing the same thing. So that with the Think and Grow Rich process and the 12 minutes a day, is that more of a okay, cool? Those old patterns that you had playing the guitar in that way, you need someone else to show you the new patterns that need to be formed and created.
Right. And I think, the reality when I was in my 30s and 40s as an entrepreneur, I worked harder than everybody around me. I mean, I'm working 70 hours a week, and I thought, boy, I deserve big success for that reason. But I saw the difference between working hard and working smarter. And I saw that so often in my 30s and 40s, I'd get off in the weeds. There's so many things you can get focused on when you have a company. You're spending time on things that really don't move the needle, but you're because you're not focused enough. You're doing it. You're not thinking through the business. I found that you can have success in a business if you just outthink the competition. Just think it through. What are you doing? So much of business success is marketing. And one of the things I found in marketing is that the vast majority of so-called experts in marketing are not very good. And in my experience, I found that in any profession, only 1 in 10 people is great. And there's another maybe 2 or 3 out of 10 that are good, but the most people are average to poor. And in marketing, I'd say it's even worse than that. My experience has been that most marketing people are not very good. And so as I work with clients, I teach them how to have a marketing co-pilot so they're not doing all the stuff and having to be the technical guy. But at the end of the day, your business is going to go because of marketing, and you got to be feeding that marketing co-pilot the emotions you want your customer to feel, and you got to structure their thought sequences properly so when they come into your world they have the proper thought sequences. You can't just hit them with everything that you do. It's step at a time here. And so that's my experience.
Talk to me about that co-pilot. So is that when you say co-pilot, do you mean a physical person or do you mean a certain plan that's working in the background?
No, I'm talking about a physical person. And when as with every business I have now, I see that the reason they're not making $1 million a year typically is they need better marketing. And so many businesses do a poor job of measuring their marketing, and whoever is overseeing their marketing probably isn't being held accountable. And what evolved for me was, well, if marketing is moving the needle with my business, then I'm going to spend half a day a week and immerse myself in, first of all, looking at the numbers and each week and seeing, are we trending in the right direction or not? And it's on me to figure out how to try different hooks to influence people. And you might say, well, wait a minute, maybe that should be the job of the marketing expert. Well, yes, it should be. But you know what? They don't care as much about your business as you do. And if that's what moves the needle, and you're an entrepreneur that wants to net $1 million a year, you better embrace being involved deeply in that marketing, but not to the point where you got to learn every little thing. You feed the key stuff to your marketing co-pilot, and again, what's emotionally driving your customers? What are the unique things about what you do? What makes you different? And they can then figure it out. But it's a collaborative relationship.
And that's one of the reasons I'm a big fan of either profit share or rev share, because then if you've got a marketing person on the team, they're actually invested in the outcome.
Yeah.
Like you say, these retainers, they're and that actually kind of leads into the next question: is where do you feel that marketing is going in the next? And we sometimes say 5 years, but I think things are moving that fast. Like, where do you feel marketing's going in the next 12 months?
I tell you, I think it obviously depends on your business, but one of the things that I think has a lot of potential is non-internet marketing.
Yeah.
I mean, that may be a radical idea. I don't know, but we see so much value in not depending on the internet.
So are we talking like direct mail and TV ads, billboard ads, or are we talking like strategic partnerships or something different?
I think something different, Paul. Let me think how to describe it. I think it's more one-on-one marketing. One of the things I found interesting is that, there's a lot of internet marketers that have created millions of followers, right? Yeah. But you join their group, there's ways that you can leverage what they've created and pull out people out of their group that would be interested in your whatever you got. I mean, I'm talking about it from maybe my perspective of what I do, but I think this applies almost to any business, and it's way more organic than the traditional internet marketing.
It's interesting you say that. I mean, I actually just wrote a post today about monetizing the no's as well. So like actually starting a conversation with each person, because everyone's looking to put them in this sales process straight away, rather than, hey, are they actually ready for the product? Maybe they are ready for a product, but it might not be your product. So find out what they want and give it to them. And if you can provide it, great. But if not, go and find someone else who can, and then make a referral commission.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll tell you something I've learned that has been fascinating to me. So, as as we're talking, I've the title of what I do is the science of success, the science of leveraging yourself to dramatically impact your income. Well, sort of a nebulous topic, right? Sort of. Yeah. And I've been so I sold my company about 7 years ago. So this process of sharing this with the world has been a 7-year process. Well, only in the last 6 months, I created a 3-minute video that explained this. And I see the power of video and making it succinct. People's attention span isn't much longer than about 3 minutes. That may be stretching it. But now I have something that explains what I do in 3 minutes, and I have seen the immense power of this in a way that I never had that before. And it explains why we're different than everybody else, and so that's maybe a lesson for your audience that you got to be able to explain what you do and why you're different than everybody else. And I think you got to do it in video. And that doesn't mean that you can just blindly send your 3-minute video out, because people won't give you 3 minutes that you don't know. But if you can hook them to just open their mind to you and maybe do a Zoom call, or again, it depends on the product. But if you got a 3-minute video that I call an explainer video, and you have testimonials that are done properly, it's killer.
Yeah, and that first 5 seconds as well is probably the most important, right?
Yeah.
If they don't feel like they're in the right place, then it's game over. They moved on to the next shiny new thing.
Right. Like as an example with my product, I'm like, what I have is not for most people. It's only for the people that are driven with a vision. Well, I find that that's about 1 in 3 business owners. 2 out of 3 are not really that driven, and that's okay. They're not going to end up doing the 12 minutes a day, but for the ones that are driven, it's a game changer.
How do you find the ones that are?
Um, Well, I try and repel the ones that aren't. I guess is the. But seriously, I don't know. I'll give you an example that this just happened 20 minutes ago, right before we got on. So I'm in Austin, and big technology, a lot of entrepreneurship here in Austin, and like I said, I teach at the University of Texas and at their business school, and I'm talking to a guy that runs a private equity company, and they are buying companies that are netting, about $5 million a year, and they have a fund, and they're going to buy about 75 of these clients, these companies, and they would like us to teach our methodology to their each one of their CEOs. Well, that's a good example, and then that's also a good example of sort of this organic marketing. A friend of mine introduced me to them, and but you can spend so much time on the internet when actually there may be better ways to introduce what you do to people.
And that's the power of a podcast is you never know who you're connecting with, right? Like before this call, we didn't know each other. I just found you, John, and we connected and got to know each other. So yeah, whether it's digital or non-digital, the power of leverage and relationships, I think, is probably even more powerful than it's ever been, right?
Yeah, I think it's all about leverage. I mean, all about leverage. Again, working smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
And the thing I often tell people is the human brain is the most powerful methodology ever invented. Yet nobody's ever taught you how to use the human brain to create the life you want and to leverage yourself. But once you learn the science of the human brain and the human mind, you can then leverage yourself, and what a difference it makes to play the game of life at 100% of your potential rather than 20%.
Yeah, definitely. So, John, a question that we ask everyone who comes on the show is, what do you want to be remembered for when you die?
I want to be remembered as the person that created the top application in the world at the top book in the world on success.
Super simple. I like it.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I feel so blessed for what this methodology has done for me, and I know the pain that I went through in my 30s and 40s as a driven entrepreneur, and I just want to share it with others and make their path a lot easier than mine.
Yep. Yeah. I love it. Absolutely love it. So, John, what is one quick win that people can use to amplify their business today?
I think the quick win is just step back and think about what really moves the needle in your business. What is it? And then once you figure out what it is, question it and question whether that really moves the needle. Just that effort to think about it is powerful, and then focus on that every day.
Yeah. I think a lot of people listening to this will underestimate how powerful what you just said is. It's just like, oh, well, that sounds easy. Yeah, I'll try and do it. Yeah. Rather than, hey, if you just did that every day, like that's what's caused your exponential growth in 5 million in that 25 million in gross. It's just phenomenal. So anyone listening to this right now, go and do what John just told you to do, because it's 100% worth it. So also, John, who would you nominate to be on the podcast next?
God, Paul, I'm going to have to think about that. I do not know. I have to think about that.
We'll come back to it.
Right.
That's all good. And finally, where can people find out more about you?
The name of my company is Think It Be It, and so the website is thinkitbeit.com. Pretty easy.
Fantastic. Go to thinkitbeit.com and see how you can unlock more of your human potential from 20% going right up. You know, I think there was that movie. I can't remember what it was, where that guy took the Limitless. I think that's what it was called.
Yeah.
Right.
I just saw that.
Don't need no pills for that to actually do it in real life. You just need to go to Think It Be It.
Exactly.
Exactly. So, John, been a pleasure having you on the show. Really appreciate it. And you have been listening to the Amplify to Seven Figures podcast with me, Paul Ace, and my amazing guest today, John Mitchell. Remember, guys, amplify your business and amplify your life. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Amplify to Seven Figures podcast. To access the show notes, episodes, and this month's giveaway, head over to www.amplifyto7figures.com. Remember, amplify your business, amplify your life.